Welcome back. In our last 2 lessons, we learned about several ways to say because. And in this lesson, I'll teach you about how to say if and when. And just like before, I'll be teaching some basic ways to say this, as well as several more advanced ways to do this. First, though, here are all of the topics we'll learn about in this lesson. Okay, now let's get started with the very first form. Umyeon is used for hypothetical situations. It's used to express that something might or might not happen. The form umyeon can translate as both if and when, depending on the sentence. However, since this form is about hypothetical situations, when in doubt, you can translate it as if. To use it, attach umyeon directly after a verb stem that ends with a consonant, or attach myeon if it ends with a vowel. So 하다 would become 하면, and 먹다 would become 먹으면. Common verb stem exceptions apply, so you can pause the video here for those.
시간이 있으면 같이 가요.
If there's time, let's go together.
저는 눈이 오면 항상 코트를 입어요.
I always wear a coat when it snows.
돈이 생기면 차를 살 거예요.
If I get money, I'll buy a car.
문을 열면 추워요.
It's cold when you open the door.
한국어를 배우고 싶으면 한국에서 살아보세요.
If you want to learn Korean, try living in Korea. You can use 그러면 when starting a new sentence in order to connect it with a previous sentence someone else said. It's used in the same way as 그렇지만 or 그런데 and other words. This also comes from the verb 그렇다. Literally, 그러면 means if so, but more naturally it can translate as well then, or simply then. 그러면 can also be shortened to 그럼 in informal speech.
그러면 제가 할게요.
Then I'll do it.
그럼 이제 뭐 해요?
Then what do I do now? When used with the form 음연, the verb 이다 becomes 이면 after a consonant and 면 after a vowel. Alternatively, 이다 can also become 이라면. 이라면 after a consonant and 라면 after a vowel. 이라면 has more emphasis than 이면, if, but the meaning is the same. Also note that 아니다 becomes 아니라면 in this form.
저라면 이렇게 할 거예요.
I'd do this if it were me.
철수가 제 친구라면 좋겠어요.
It'd be good if, meaning I wish, 철수 were my friend. The word 때 literally means time. The form 때 is used to describe the time when something happens and can translate as when or the time when. It can be used with nouns and verbs. Like other nouns we've seen in this course, 때 can also be used by adding the particle 에 or 이다. To use it, attach 때 after a noun with a space. So 점심 would become 점심때.
결혼식 때 만났어요.
We met at the wedding, meaning the time of the wedding.
방학 때 운동을 했어요.
I exercised at the time of my school vacation. With verbs, attach 때 directly after a verb stem that ends with a consonant, or attach 때 if it ends with a vowel. So 하다 would become 할 때, and 먹다 would become 먹을 때. This can be a verb stem in the present or the past tense. The meaning's the same. So 하다 could either be 할 때 or 했을 때. And common verb stem exceptions may apply. You can pause the video here for some of those.
따뜻할 때 바다를 보러 갈 거예요.
When it's warm, I'll go to see the ocean.
어렸을 때 기억이 없어요.
I don't have memories when I was a child.
문을 열 때 소리가 나요.
It makes a sound when I open the door.
한국에서 살았을 때 매일 한국어를 연습했어요.
When I lived in Korea, I practiced Korean every day.
뭐 할 때 행복해요?
When doing what are you happy? Or more naturally, what makes you happy? To help remember when to use 음연 and 때, think of their meanings. 음연 is used for hypothetical situations. Something might or might not happen. 때 is used to describe the time when something happens, not something hypothetical. So here are two examples of that.
학교에 가면 재미있어요.
It's fun if or when I go to school.
학교에 갈 때 많이 걸어야 돼요.
When I go to school, I have to walk a lot. The 때 form can also be combined with the particle mada, meaning each or every, to mean each time or every time or whenever.
방학 때마다 한국에 가요.
Whenever it's school break, I go to Korea.
공부할 때마다 잠이 와요.
Whenever I study, I feel sleepy.
운전할 때마다 배가 아팠어요.
Every time I drove, my stomach hurt. The 음연 form is used for hypothetical situations that might or might not happen. The 음연 form can be combined with the plain form to add more emphasis. While the 음연 form can translate as both if and when, depending on the sentence, the tamian form only translates as if. Note that this same form is used in 이라면, which also has more emphasis. Again, 이다 becomes 이라면, and 아니다 becomes 아니라면. To use it, conjugate a verb into the plain form in any tense and attach 면. So 하다 would become 한다면.
지금 시간이 없다면 내일 만나요.
If there's no time now, let's meet tomorrow.
제가 한다면 조금 다를 거예요.
If I do it, it'll be a little different.
엄마랑 갔다면 더 좋았을 것 같아요.
It would have been better if I went with mom.
그게 아니라면 살 게 없어요.
If not that, there's nothing to buy.
그래도 배가 고프다면 우유를 마시세요.
Still, if you're hungry, drink milk. maniak means if, and it can be used together with the 음연 form, or any form that means if, in order to add more emphasis. It's optional. maniak and maniage have the same meaning. The particle a is optional.
만약에 내가 잠이 들면 깨워주세요.
If I fall asleep, please wake me up.
만약에 비가 온다면 집에서 책을 볼 거예요.
If it rains, I'll read a book at home.
만약에 사고가 나면 어떻게 할 거예요?
If there's an accident, what will you do? 만일에 has the same meaning as 만약에. However, 만일에 sounds more formal. It might be found in more formal and older writing.
만일 내가 다시 학생이 된다면 다른 걸 공부할 거예요.
If I became a student again, I'd study something different.
만일 내가 혼자였다면 도망갔을 것 같아요.
If I were alone, I think I'd run away. The toram form is also used for hypothetical situations that might have happened but did not. It's only used when talking about the past. For example, A tora면 B means if A had happened or had been, then B. This form is often used to express regret or relief about the past. So to use it, attach tora면 directly after a past tense verb stem. this will always end with the double consonant 시옷. For example, 하다 would become 했더라면. Following tora면, the sentence will typically end with a form meaning would have, such as the form 쓸 것이다. For example, 했을 거예요. Or 쓸 것 같다. For example, 했을 것 같아요. Or the form 뻔하다, meaning almost happened. For example, 할 뻔했어요.
한글이 좀 더 어려웠더라면 한국어를 배우지 않았을 거예요.
If Hangul were a little harder, I would not have learned Korean.
선생님의 말을 들었더라면 시험을 통과했을 거예요.
If I had listened to the teacher, I would have passed the test.
오늘 친구를 만나지 않았더라면 정말 후회할 뻔했어요.
If I hadn't met my friend today, I almost, meaning I would have, regret it.
제가 선생님이었더라면 방학에는 숙제를 주지 않았을 거예요.
If I were a teacher, I wouldn't give homework during the school break.
설탕을 조금 덜 넣었더라면 완벽했을 거예요.
If I'd added a little less sugar, it would have been perfect. Alternatively, you can use the noun 시, meaning time, to mean when. This is used in the same way as 때 after nouns. However, 시 is only used in writing, such as advertisements, signs, and official announcements. It's not used in everyday speech.
야외 촬영 시 참고할 점을 알려드릴게요.
I'll tell you the things that you should consider when you're filming outdoors.
해외여행 시 꼭 기억하세요.
Make sure to remember when you travel abroad. You can use the form 때쯤 to mean around the time. This is used and conjugated in the same way as 때. So 하다 would become 할 때쯤. 때쯤 is informal and is not used in formal or official speech and writing.
저는 방학 때쯤 항상 아파요.
I'm always sick around school break.
집에 갈 때쯤 전화할게요.
Around when I go home, I'll give you a call. You can also use the form 무렵 to mean around the time. This has the same meaning as 때쯤, and it's used and conjugated in the same way as 때. So 하다 would become 할 무렵. It can be used with both nouns and verbs. 무렵 sounds slightly formal and is less common in everyday speech.
겨울이 끝날 무렵 독감에 걸렸어요.
Around when winter was ending, I caught a flu.
제인 고달은 10살 무렵에 아프리카로 갔어요.
Jane Goodall went to Africa around the age of 10. Alternatively, use the form 쯤 to mean around the time. This can be used like 무렵. 쯤 can also shorten to 쯤. This is conjugated in the same way as 때, so 하다 would become 할 쯤, and can be used after both nouns and verbs. 쯤 is different than the informal particle 쯤, which attaches to nouns and means about or approximately. 쯤 has a slightly fancy or formal feeling and is less common than 무렵.
아이는 1살이 될 즈음 걷기 시작해요.
A child starts to walk when they turn around 1 year old.
설날 즈음에 가보려고요.
I'm going to go around the Lunar New Year.
40즈음 제 말을 이해하게 될 거예요.
You'll understand what I'm saying around the age of 40.
해가 뜰 즈음 일어났어요.
I woke up around when the sun rose. Another way to say if is using the form coden. This coden form is not the same form as coden요, which is used at the end of a sentence. coden can be used in the same way as 으면 to mean both if and when, depending on the sentence. coden is used when talking about the conditions or requirements for something. You can translate it as if or when something actually happens, or if or when the conditions are met, or simply once something is or once something happens. coden is not used to make sentences that end with the present tense or the past tense. This is because saying if or when something actually happens, something is or something was would not make logical sense. Instead, it's most often used to make sentences that end with a command or that end in the future tense. To use it, attach coden directly after a verb stem. So 하다 becomes 하거든.
기억이 나거든 언제든 알려주세요.
Let me know anytime if you remember.
결과가 나오거든 다시 말해요.
Let's speak again when the results come out.
다 쓰거든 그때 또 사요.
When you finish using it, buy it again then.
누가 절 아냐고 묻거든 모른다고 해주세요.
If someone asks if you know me, please say you don't. And that's all for this lesson. Remember to take your time, take lots of notes, and practice everything in this lesson before moving on. And I'll see you again in the next lesson. 그럼 다음에 또 봐.